The flashbulbs exploded like lightning, flooding the room with blinding brilliance. The bass of a techno beat reverberated through the gilded catwalk in Paris. And then she appeared. Linda Evangelista. She didn't just walk, she glided as if carved out of ice and light. Critics would later call her the chameleon of fashion, the woman who could transform into anyone photographers desired. Yet behind that veneer of perfection lay a paradox that stunned even the most cynical corners of the industry. Linda was the woman who famously declared she would never get out of bed for less than $10,000 a day. That audacious statement became a cultural landmark, elevating her into a symbol of power during the golden age of the 90-second supermodels. But the very words that defined her also haunted her, painting her as both untouchable goddess and fragile target. To the world, she embodied the shimmering dream of fashion. But behind those glacial blue eyes lurked exhaustion, loneliness, and a fragility that the public could not see. She rose to impossible heights, only to later tumble into an abyss that revealed the dark side of fashion, an industry that builds icons only to dismantle them. When the spotlights finally dim, what remains? A timeless legend etched into memory, or a weary soul erased by the very system that once worshipped her. Linda Evangelista's story is not just about beauty, it is about the price of living entirely within its blinding glow. Linda Evangelista was born in 1,965 inches Street, Catharines, a quiet town in Ontario, Canada. Her family were Italian immigrants, devoutly Catholic and deeply rooted in tradition. Her father worked long hours in factories, while her mother kept the household together with discipline and warmth. Linda grew up with two older brothers in an atmosphere that was both strict and nurturing, a world far removed from the glittering runways she would later conquer. From an early age, Linda sensed she was different. While other girls dreamed of becoming teachers or nurses, she found herself captivated by the dazzling images on magazine covers and the gowns worn by Hollywood stars. At school, she wasn't the most popular girl, but her piercing blue eyes and sharply defined features made her unforgettable to anyone who looked twice. In her community, however, such ambitions were often dismissed. Among conservative Italian neighbors, the idea of a young woman chasing a modeling career was seen as reckless, even shameful. Linda recalled that her mother was her secret ally, the one who whispered encouragement when others doubted, who told her to nurture the spark within, even if the path was perilous. Her childhood evenings were filled with church rituals, family dinners, and long nights in her small bedroom, where she would sit before the mirror, practicing poses, altering her expressions, and imagining a life beyond the confines of her town. Those quiet rehearsals were not mere games. They were the first steps of a destiny that would carry her to the very core of the 90-second supermodels phenomenon, while also setting her on a path that would one day collide with the dark side of fashion. Linda Evangelista's first brush with destiny did not come under the bright lights of Paris or Milan, but in the modest setting of a local beauty pageant in Niagara. At just 16, she entered the contest more out of curiosity than ambition. She didn't win the crown, but something far more valuable happened. One of the judges noticed her piercing gaze and icy poise. He didn't see a provincial girl in a gown, he saw a potential model with an aura that could transcend borders. His words, "You should try modeling," planted a seed that would change everything. When Linda brought this suggestion home, the reaction was explosive. Her father, a traditional Italian immigrant, dismissed modeling as shallow and dangerous. He feared the lure of bright lights would consume his daughter, leaving her vulnerable in a world he did not trust. But Linda's determination was unshakable. She continued her schooling while quietly exploring opportunities, clinging to the belief that her destiny lay beyond Street Catharines. Her mother, once again, became her silent supporter, encouraging her to at least take the leap. Soon after, Linda was invited by a Toronto modeling agency for a test shoot. Standing nervously under the glare of studio lights, she was asked to shift expressions, to embody moods. In a matter of minutes, she transformed. Icy sophistication, gentle warmth, mysterious allure. The team was astonished. This wasn't a teenager pretending. It was a natural-born chameleon, already carrying the instincts that would define her place among the 90-second supermodels. The real turning point arrived with an invitation to a casting in New York. Standing at the threshold of towering skyscrapers, Linda faced a choice: return to the safety of her small-town life or step into the unknown. With her heart racing, she chose the latter. Her neighbors and community back home scoffed, certain she would fail. But their skepticism only fueled her fire. Linda vowed to prove them wrong, to transform herself into more than just another hopeful face. That vow would eventually propel her into the dazzling pantheon of global icons, but also toward the shadows that revealed the dark side of fashion, a world that promises glory while demanding unimaginable sacrifices. New York was only the beginning. Linda Evangelista quickly realized that if she wanted to achieve true greatness, she needed to leave Canada behind and face the crucible of European fashion capitals. In 1984, she arrived in Paris, the city of dreams and illusions. It was here that the true tests began. At first, Linda encountered rejection after rejection. Casting directors dismissed her as too cold, too distant. But one photographer saw what others missed: the uncanny ability of her face and body to transform endlessly, to become whatever the camera demanded. Her career accelerated once she signed with elite model management. Almost overnight, Linda found herself walking for Karl Lagerfeld at Chanel, Gianni Versace, and Giorgio Armani. But she was never just a model. She was a muse, an embodiment of vision. Each time she stepped onto a runway, she dissolved into the spirit of the clothes, sometimes ethereal, sometimes commanding, always unforgettable. Then, in 1988, she made a decision that would change her life. She cut her hair into a sharp pixie crop. For a model in that era, long hair was practically sacred. Such a drastic move was seen as career suicide, yet what was supposed to end her trajectory instead catapulted her into legend. Overnight, Linda became the face of transformation itself. Magazine covers lined up. Designers fought to have her. Photographers declared her the most versatile woman they had ever captured. The late 1000, 980 seconds and early 1000, 990 seconds ushered in the reign of the 90-second supermodels, a golden age of 5 women who redefined the very meaning of modeling: Linda Evangelista, Naomi Campbell, Christy Turlington, Cindy Crawford, and Claudia Schiffer. Together, they were more than models. They were global celebrities, commanding headlines and salaries that rivaled Hollywood stars. Among them, Linda stood out as the consummate professional, the chameleon capable of disappearing into any role. Her infamous declaration, "I don't get out of bed for less than $10,000 a day," became both her crown and her curse. On one hand, it cemented her reputation as an untouchable figure, proof that models could command respect, money, and influence. On the other, it painted her as arrogant, making her a target for criticism. Yet the reality was undeniable. Linda and her peers had elevated modeling into an art form, changing it from silent accessory to cultural phenomenon. Campaign after campaign bore her face. She embodied Chanel's elegance, Versace's power, and Armani's sophistication. She became inseparable from the artistry of Steven Meisel, the photographer who once said, "Linda is the only person I could photograph every day of my life and never grow tired." Together, they created some of the most iconic images of the century portraits that still define what high fashion looks like. On the runway, Linda's presence was electric. Naomi was fiery, Christy was serene, Cindy was sensual, Claudia was sweet, but Linda was ice and steel. Her stare could silence a room. Her stride was less a walk than a command. When she appeared, audiences held their breath. When she turned, Applause erupted like thunder. Designers loved her not just for her beauty, but because she made their clothes live. She didn't wear couture, she inhabited it. Linda's versatility became her weapon. She could embody a Parisian aristocrat in the morning and a punk rebel in the evening. No hairstyle, no makeup concept, no theme could overwhelm her. That adaptability gave her longevity in an industry that devoured new faces. For a decade, she remained at the center, while others rose and fell around her. But her influence went beyond runways and magazines. Linda was a cultural force. When she cut her hair, women around the world followed. When she wore a certain shade of lipstick, it sold out instantly. When she fronted a campaign, sales soared. She was no longer just a model. She was an arbiter of beauty, shaping how millions of women saw themselves. Yet even at her highest point, cracks began to form. The very perfection that made her legendary became a cage. Every cover demanded reinvention. Every campaign required her to outdo herself. And as younger models began to emerge, Linda felt the weight of maintaining an impossible standard. It was the paradox of the 90-second Supermodels era. The brighter the light, the darker the shadows behind it. Looking back, Linda Evangelista's peak was dazzling, but it was also the prelude to something more somber. Beneath the applause and the flashbulbs, the stage was being set for her inevitable collision with the dark side of fashion, a world that celebrates its icons, then mercilessly tests their humanity. Linda Evangelista was never remembered solely for her beauty. What set her apart was her audacity, her willingness to make choices that defied the very system she dominated. While the world worshipped long, flowing hair, Linda shocked everyone by chopping hers into a pixie cut. What most believed was career suicide became her revolution. That boldness redefined her career and showed that she was not afraid of risk, nor of dismantling conventions that others clung to. But her most defining difference was her attitude toward her profession. When she famously declared, "I don't get out of bed for less than $10,000 a day," the world gasped. Critics branded her arrogant, but Linda's message was sharper than their ridicule. She was demanding respect. She was declaring that models were not disposable ornaments, but artists, worthy of recognition and pay equal to the stars of Hollywood. That single statement echoed the rising power of the 90-second supermodels, who collectively forced the fashion world to acknowledge their status. Linda also knew when to say no. She turned down lucrative offers that compromised her values or clashed with her vision of herself. In an industry where temptation is constant, she refused to become a product stripped of dignity. This defiance made her more than just a face. It made her an icon. Her legacy during this period wasn't only about transformation and allure. It was about courage. In defying rules, in demanding worth, and in walking away from what didn't align with her truth. Linda Evangelista revealed the resilience needed to survive not only the glamour but also the lurking dark side of fashion. At the height of her fame, Linda Evangelista seemed untouchable. She was the icy queen of the runway, the muse of photographers, the face of countless campaigns. But even legends have cracks invisible to the naked eye. Behind the applause and the flashbulbs, Linda began to face storms that no camera could capture: personal heartbreak, professional shifts, and the relentless pressure of maintaining an image of perfection. One of the deepest blows came from her marriage to Gerald Marie, the powerful head of elite Paris. The union ended swiftly in bitterness, leaving Linda wounded. Years later, when Marie faced allegations of sexual misconduct within the fashion world, the shadow of that relationship cast a heavy cloud over Linda's past. She remained silent, but the world looked at her with sorrow, as though the goddess of the runway had also been betrayed in her private life. By the late 1990 seconds, Linda's career began to lose momentum. The age of the 90-second supermodels was fading as new generations emerged. For a woman who had lived at the center of the spotlight, stepping back was almost unbearable, yet Linda chose withdrawal. She limited her appearances, preferring silence over compromise. To some, it was failure. To Linda, it was survival, a way to preserve dignity in an industry that devours even its brightest stars. But the most devastating chapter was yet to come. In 2015, seeking to refine her appearance, Linda underwent a cosmetic procedure known as cryolipolysis, or cool sculpting. The treatment, widely marketed as safe, promised to eliminate stubborn fat. For Linda, it became a nightmare. Instead of sculpting, her body reacted with paradoxical adipose hyperplasia, leaving hardened bulges that distorted her face and figure. The transformation was cruel. The woman once hailed as flawless no longer recognized herself. Linda disappeared from public life, shunning cameras, hiding behind closed doors. In interviews years later, she confessed that she spiraled into depression, consumed by shame and despair. At her lowest, she admitted, she thought about ending her life. For a woman who had once defined the standards of beauty for the world, the betrayal of her own body was unbearable. Tabloids speculated endlessly. Where was Linda Evangelista? Why had she vanished? Rumors circulated retirement, secrecy, illness. The silence only deepened the mystery. The supermodel, who once epitomized glamour, had become a ghost, a haunting reminder of the fragility behind the facade. This disappearance embodied the dark side of fashion in its rawest form. The industry that demands eternal youth and perfection abandons its icons the moment they falter. It wasn't until 2021 that Linda stepped into the light again. In a powerful interview, she revealed the truth about her procedure gone wrong. She showed the world her altered body, her scars both visible and invisible. It was not a return to reclaim the throne, but an act of survival to tell her story, to wrestle back dignity from a system that had long discarded her. She filed a lawsuit against the company behind the treatment, standing not as a supermodel but as a woman demanding justice. Her return was met with both heartbreak and admiration. Fans who once idolized her for her flawless beauty now embraced her vulnerability. The same blue eyes that once commanded fashion's stage now revealed pain, resilience, and courage. Linda was no longer simply a star of the 90-second supermodels era. She had become a living testament to survival, to the strength required to rise after being broken. The tragedy of Linda Evangelista is not only her personal suffering, but what it exposes about the fashion world itself. For decades, it thrived on her perfection, her ability to transform into whatever fantasy it needed. But the moment she could no longer fit the mold, the machine turned away. In the silence that followed, Linda's story forced the world to ask how many others had been lost, discarded, consumed by the relentless demand for beauty. Her disappearance was not merely the absence of a model from the runway. It was a warning, a reminder that beneath the shimmering surface of the dark side of fashion, there are wounds, scars, and human beings paying the price. Linda Evangelista, once the ultimate chameleon, became the mirror reflecting the industry's most painful truth, that perfection is both an illusion and a prison. Looking back at Linda Evangelista's story, one does not see only a supermodel, but a complex figure, radiant yet fragile, untouchable, yet deeply human. She helped redefine modeling, transforming it from a silent profession into one of influence and power. Without Linda, the term 90-second supermodels would never have carried the same weight. She embodied what it meant to be more than a face. She was a force that demanded respect. Her legacy is etched not just in Vogue covers or Versace campaigns, but in the courage to challenge norms. She proved that models could command dignity, set their own worth, and reject what diminished them. And years later, when she revealed her failed cosmetic procedure, Linda did something perhaps even braver. She shattered the illusion of perfection. In showing her scars, she reminded the world that beauty is not invincibility. The irony of Linda's life is that her downfall made her more relatable. By exposing the dark side of fashion, she allowed others to see the cost of an industry built on flawless appearances. Her story is no longer only about glamour, but also about survival, resilience, and honesty. And so the question lingers. If Linda Evangelista were to begin today, in a world of social media and relentless scrutiny, would we embrace her the same way? Or perhaps, as with so many legends, her brilliance belongs to a time when beauty itself was both a gift and a curse.